This is Pamela Fagan Hutchins, and you found me on the Next Chapter podcast. But you've not only found me, today you've also found Debbie Burke. Debbie Burke is a novelist from Montana, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pamela. It's just such a joy to meet you. I really enjoy your book that I'm working on right now, Dead Pile, and I just really enjoy your personality. The podcasts I've watched are so funny. Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes unintentionally.
Uh, I like that. I do that too. Yeah.
Well, I likewise have enjoyed getting introduced to Tawny Lindholm and your other characters in Fruits of the Poisonous Tree, your most recent novel release. I'm going to bifurcate that into novel versus nonfiction because you've also recently released The Villain's Journey about writing great antagonists in books. So congratulations on both of those.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a crazy road that we walk, and I published my first thriller was about 10 years ago. I think it was 2016 or 2017, and I now have 10 books, and
That's great.
that's kinda cool. I feel like, "Okay, I guess I can call myself an author now,"
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you very safely can. And so this is for you, The Fruits of the Poisonous Tree is the ninth book in
Mhm.
the series. And of course, Villain's Journey, a complete departure over there, sharing what you've learned with other writers. So
Yeah,
I say that counts.
yeah. Well, I love to write villains, and, I fortunately have had very nice reviews about my villains. One reader said she was deliciously evil, and and that was about the villain in Fruit of the Poisonous Tree, who is a female billionaire who is trying to, buy up a lot of property around Flathead Lake in Montana, and that's a huge, beautiful landmark lake, largest freshwater, west of the Mississippi. And so, whenever there's development, post-development going on down there, it gets intense.
Yes.
A lot of old timers that still have cabins down there that grew up in the 50s and 40s and 30s. And so but unfortunately, the tax is getting so high, they have to sell. So anyway,
Right.
this villain, whose name is Freya Boone, uh, is buying up all this acreage because she has this vision of, creating a place like, Disneyland, except for, winter and summer sports. So and, however, there is one, a man who owns a cherry orchard on Flathead Lake, and he is of Japanese, ethnicity, and he has had that orchard since 1988 when there was a terrible freeze that wiped out the cherry crop. By the way, I have to give this little spiel because flathead cherries are the best in the universe.
They
So,
sell them
and
here in Sheridan, Wyoming, and they are delicious. They bring a
yeah,
truck in.
good, cool, cool. Uh, and there's this microclimate around Flathead Lake that is good for growing cherries, where you couldn't grow it, 10 miles away in my backyard. You couldn't really do it successfully. So it's a very unique environment. But in 1988, there was a terrible cold snap. It had been 50 degrees. The trees thought it was spring. They started budding out. And the next day it was 40 below. And it just decimated the crop. And at that point, my character, Mr. Kobayashi, had he'd always wanted to own property because he had been born in an internment camp during World War II, and where American citizens were interred. However, because they were Japanese ethnicity, that was enough to stick them in the camp. So he had
Right.
always had this dream of owning property and making a cherry orchard because that had been his family history. And so here's the opportunity. He was able to buy this property, and tree by tree, he and his wife planted it and made it bigger and bigger. And he's gotten to the point where he's very successful. However, he is, and his wife has passed away, and her ashes are buried on that property. So he is not going to sell under any circumstances.
Right.
However, this billionaire really wants that piece of property, and so
Yeah.
she starts sending her bad guys out. Uh, and what prompted the idea for this book was I was driving down to Flathead Lake to buy cherries a few summers ago, and at the side of the highway, there's this burned out house with a cherry orchard behind it. And it's just kind of like half standing. Walls have fallen down so you can see inside like a dollhouse,
Yeah.
but it's just the second floor has fallen on the first floor. It's just really a mess. And all there is fencing around it. And so I started asking some of the locals, what happened here? And I said, well, nobody really knows, but it happened months ago and it's just been sitting like that. And so my writer's imagination just kind of going off. And so pretty soon, there's a dead body in the basement of this burned down house. So, you
I
can't
love it.
yeah. So anyway, that was the germ of the or seed, I guess, or cherry pit maybe
Yeah, the
idea.
cherry pit. Well,
Yeah.
it's to me, it's there's so many different threads within this book that we could spend the entire time talking about because they're really interesting. There's the thread of family dynamics. The father-daughter relationship in this book is fantastic. There's a thread that is the husband-wife dynamic, secrets kept, how far do you go to support one another, etc. And of course, there's the thing that all of us in the Rocky Mountain West, or the greater Rocky Mountain West, if you will, right now, are worried about, which is development, which is people moving in that, on the one hand, we want to be welcoming and share the beauty and majesty and grandeur of our wild animals and our beautiful mountainous areas, she says, deep from the deep south of Wyoming, nearly on the Montana border. But on the other hand, we want them to have respect for leaving it wild and for preserving it for future generations. And those two things are often quite at odds. And you guys are really facing that
Yeah.
from greater Bozeman expansion, let's call it
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
in Wyoming, Montana, as we are from the greater Jackson expansion in Wyoming. And then the last piece that really, really grabbed me was, well, multi-generational issues within a Japanese family, the granddaughter and the grandfather, and then just the whole idea of what it's like to come from that kind of internment history and still be proudly within the United States and trying to make an American dream here after what you've been through. There was so much. There you go. That was my if I'm teaching a class on this book speech, but there was
Well,
so
thank you.
much in there that was really rich, and it was one of my favorite things about diving into a mystery is if there is a real if you can suspend belief as a reader and really believe this would have happened on Flathead Lake in Montana and nowhere else in the world. This particular crime, these particular families, these particular dynamics are so authentic and unique that there's nowhere else in the world it could have happened and nothing else that could have happened. So that was that was my long way of saying I really loved the richness and depth
Oh,
of all of that in your book.
thank you. Thank you. And I had some just great resources. A friend of mine is a Japanese ethnicity, but also biracial. And he eh, turned me on to a group that does reunions essentially of people who had been in internment camps and their descendants. And they would make pilgrimages to, for instance, his grandparents were in Row, Rowar. I can't remember how to pronounce it, but I think it was in Arkansas. And so they made pilgrimages, and there would be hundreds of people who were, um, you know, uh, actually survivors or children, grandchildren, great grandchildren of survivors. And that allowed me to get into listen to interviews and read journals by people who had, were part of this organization. And that
Yeah.
gave a lot of richness for the subject matter and the background. And I just am very grateful because it was a window into a very, very different world and a very different, um, problem that
Mhm.
as white Americans, we would never figure would happen.
No,
I
and
yeah.
and you think about, or at least from my perspective, having been in grade school and high school in the 70s and 80s,
Mhm,
it was an in passing reference, to anything
mm,
like that, and yet it is a big important event, right? It's
mm,
something really important that happened in our country, so hard to get the information because 'cause you're not getting it from school textbooks. You go
mm.
to, like you said, the families and the
Orig
survivors.
Yeah, the original sources because
Yeah,
these people were, for the most part, American citizens,
yeah,
and they owned businesses and, property and homes, and they were just rounded up and stuck in the camps, and
yeah,
it's a pretty horrific,
right, we
uh,
had it here in Wyoming too. Um, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that your book also, just to give people a real idea of how incredibly nuanced it is, it also deals with mental health issues. So,
mm,
it's a really real world, authentic dive into these people's lives and has a great villain. I mean, what's not to love there? You've got Montana, you've got a great villain, and then you've got this really rich, nuanced cultural, historical, and familial look, you know, complete with stepmoms and all the good stuff. She says as a stepmom. So
well, my main character, actually, there's 2 main characters, Tawny Lindholm, who is a, uh, 50-ish widow, and, Tillman Rosenbaum is this very brilliant, bombastic, aggressive, attorney who's 6'7" and has a James Earl Jones voice, and, in the first book, he had rescued her from, defended her from criminal charges and
right.
then offered her a job. And so she's been working for him, and by the end of book 2, they kinda, fell in bed, spoiler. And then, they, wind up, I think it's book 5, they get married, and so they have been working together for several years now, and they have a very complex relationship because Tawny, the stepmother, gets along way better with Tillman's children than he does, and so there's a lot of interfamily dynamics of blended families, and so
Right.
that and so I try and concentrate on those things because the wicked stepmother stereotype just it's been done. I want
That's
a good
right.
stepmother. I want a good
That's
stepmother.
right. And
And so
you've got dad who has a heart of gold inside, but a really, really hard time showing it to
right,
anybody
right.
but Tawny.
Yep, yep, and that's really essentially, she was the first person he would trust, and that, he has been always been very suspicious, very cynical, and some of his family background is covered in I think it's the second book, Stalking Midas, and the third book, Eyes in the Sky, where it goes back into his family background, which is very complex. Also, his paternal grandmother was an Ethiopian Jew. So he's uh part, some some he's all Jewish but part black. So it's
Yes.
just it's he's got a very complex family history, which
So
is
now
fun with
going
it.
going back to the inception of the original idea for this series, did you, what got you onto these characters, this setting, the whole vibe that you picked up with the series?
Well, my first book was based on some personal experience and some research that I was doing at the time. Electrical grids were very vulnerable back then. This was probably 2015, and there were a lot of documentaries and books coming out. Like Ted Koppel had written a book, Lights Out, about what happens when the grid goes down. So I'd been doing a lot of research on that. And at that time, I got my first smartphone, which made me crazy. I could not figure it out, and it was just driving me nuts. And I thought, it seems like it's possessed. And so that became the instrument of the devil, because there is a terrorist who literally does possess Tawny's phone and sets her up as a scapegoat for his attack on the electrical grid at Hungry Horse Dam. And so that's how that started. Till at the end of that book, finally he's there to defend her. And he just kind of elbowed his way into the story and would not leave. And he's been there ever since.
He's certainly not someone that you can ignore.
Definitely.
Which brings up a question that I often ask, which is, how do you handle it when characters misbehave and hijack your story? And it sounds like Tillman would be a perfect example.
Absolutely, absolutely. But he's very smart, so he generally leads me in a good direction. I'm a pantser.
Yeah.
I'm not a good plotter. And so when Tillman starts spouting off and doing stuff, I know the story is going to take off somewhere, because he's brilliant, and very difficult. Yeah, so.
So, how much of the life of Debbie prior to starting to write novels all built inevitably to where we are today, talking about novel number 9? What is it about you and your life that led inevitably here?
Well, my grandmother taught me to read and read stories to me from time I was a little tyke. And probably about by third grade, I started writing stories and like doing that, and got A's on my papers. Wow, cool. And so went through college and took creative writing classes that were available. But of course, a literature degree does not do much for you in life. So anyway, in the meantime, I had gotten married, and my husband and I wound up running a number of businesses. And so I was totally out of the writing world and the creative world, and just trying to survive economically in the very difficult business climate that was at that time. And then we finally sold our last one, moved to Montana, and I looked in the community college catalog, and there's a creative writing class in there. And so I signed up for it, went, and it was like the dam burst. All the collected stuff that I had been, you know, consciously and subconsciously gathering popped out, poured out. So I've been writing since then, and
That's
can't stop.
wonderful.
I can't stop. It's like breathing. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I know exactly what you mean. People say, "So, do you have to think really hard to come up with your stories?" And I said, "Not really. They're lined up for the rest of my life. At this point, anything new I think of interrupts the flow because I don't think I can ever finish."
Yeah, I know. I know. Our bucket list is a 55-gallon drum, oil drum.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today and giving me all of this time to share with readers, listeners out there, viewers. And I can't wait to see what's next with you. And do you think there's next is number 10 in this series, or do you have other plans?
I'm working on number 10 right now, and it just
Great.
just convinced me that I really can't totally pants a book. I have to go back and do a little organizing. So I got
Yeah.
about 200 pages into it and kind of threw up my hands. So
This is a
so
hot mess.
starting over.
Well, I look forward to it very much. And all of you out there, thanks for tuning in. I really encourage you to go out and check out Fruit of the Poisonous Tree or skip back to number 1 once you've discovered Debbie Burke and her world. And write to me and let me know what you think. Write to Debbie and let her know what you think.
Thank you, Pamela. This has
Thank
just been
you.
delightful.
It has been. And thank you, everybody. I'll see you next time.